I don't know what the legal answer is, but I'll just ask you. So when would you advise an entrepreneur to actually pay their taxes? Today, I've got a CPA, and she's not your normal CPA. She's got a top podcast. She actually calls it the IRS's least favorite podcast. So she has a lot of insight on everything that's going on in the economy and how to run your business better. This happened to a friend. He had two choices. It was either pay his taxes or pay this other thing. He chose to pay his taxes. And now he's got this thing that's a far bigger liability and problem for his business, his life, and everything else.
So the IRS is actually insanely flexible.
Yeah.
Because they would rather get a little bit up front and put the rest on payment plan. So you can spread it out over 72 months. If it's like under 50 grand, you can get it approved online through a form. If you take nothing else away from this episode, you have...
What's going on, Wealth Builders? Today, I've got a CPA on the show. And she's not your normal CPA. She's got a top podcast. She actually calls it the IRS's least favorite podcast because she's given a ton of tips on there. She also lives in Costa Rica, where I'm currently in contract to buy a piece of land to build a home. So I'm interested to pick her brain on that. And she's a CFO consultant to many different people and clients. And so she has a lot of insight on everything that's going on in the economy and how to run your business better. I've got Shannon Weinstein on. What's up?
Thank you, Ryan, for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Happy to have you here in Vegas. Did you fly in from Costa Rica?
No, we flied in from Connecticut, which is where I live in the States.
Oh, okay. That's still far. It's probably about just as far.
Yeah, I think it might be closer if I flew in from Guanacaste. So
yeah. So I got to learn about the Costa Rica thing. How did that happen? How long have you been there?
We have been there since 2020. We decided, this is the short end of the story is that my dad passed away from cancer. My husband's dad passed away from cancer in 2020. And we kind of just had this revelation of why not now? Like, why wait till retirement? Retirement isn't guaranteed. Our dads answered work emails until the day before they died.
Wow.
And we said, we want to go to Costa Rica. We just love it. And we kept saying we want to have a home there one day. And I go, why one day? Let's do it now. Let's take some of the money out of retirement. Let's take some of our savings because it was penalty and tax-free because of the CARES Act. And we just went and said, let's do it now. Live now. And we bought the house in 2020, expecting it to be kind of a vacation home and actually expecting my father-in-law to live there. Unfortunately, he didn't live to see it. And what ended up happening was we had stayed there for 8 months of 2021 and just fell in love with the country.
So there was no like tax play behind it. You're just like, we want to live here.
Not really. I think that it's kind of that arbitrage of earn money here, spend it there.
Right.
Which is always a better option. But tax-wise, it's not really that advantageous. It just depends on where you're earning your income.
Yeah. Like how's the cost of living out there relative?
It can be similar to that of the States, but I think the cost of property, the cost of land, the cost of building are much lower than the States. But once you get there, if you want like organic food and imported things that you're used to from the States, you're going to pay a pretty good price for it.
Yeah. So how long how long are you living there now, would you say?
I'd say about half the year split.
Yeah.
My husband still has a business here that he runs, so he has to be back to manage the employees and have some FaceTime with them. But I run a completely remote and virtual business. I quit my job in 2021, and now I am location agnostic, so we can come and go as we please.
How's that been?
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Because a lot of people listening to this are probably trying to quit their job and maybe start their own thing, and it can be scary leaving a salary and all those like, what was that like?
It was terrifying, but
and going to a new country.
Yeah. If you talked to me 10 years ago and said, this is where you'd be, I would say you're absolutely insane. And what ended up happening was I just kind of built my business as a side hustle. And they always say that there's a huge cliff you have to jump off when you leave a corporate job. They talk about jumping off this cliff. And I just said, I'm just going to make the jump shorter. I'm just going to build a hill so that when I jump the cliff, I just have to step down one step. And built the side hustle up. And next thing I knew, I was having enough cash flow to be able to leave the job. And I was so happy. It was 6 months sooner than I thought it would be. And through the power of a cash flow forecast, which is what I teach my clients, I was able to figure out exactly when I could quit the job and just go into my business full time.
And what made you pick Costa Rica?
My in-laws loved visiting there. My husband loved visiting there. They took me down in 2019 for a 2-week visit. I fell in love with it. I've been speaking Spanish since I was 11, and I studied it. I minored in it. I actually wanted to be a Spanish teacher growing up, and I just fell in love with the culture, the Pura Vida lifestyle, the carefree nature of everything. And I know you went down there recently.
Yep.
There's just a different energy in the air. It's not stressful. Nobody's in a rush.
No,
and
the people are super nice.
they're so kind. They're so nice.
Yeah.
And they're so pleasant. And it's almost like the natural customer service of everyone's just happy to talk to each other.
Right.
And they're so friendly. So it was such a refreshing thing, especially during COVID, to go to that contrast and to go down there and meet everybody and go, oh, this is so refreshing. People go to each other's houses, knock on the door and say, how are you doing? Invite people over. Like the fact that that's abnormal to talk about in 2023 in the United States, it made me realize the contrast of that and go, oh, this is where we need to be.
Yeah. No, I love it. Yeah. I've only been once the time I was there.
Yep.
And, we put the property under contract before I even went there, just because,
we did too, sight unseen.
Yeah. But you bought it sight unseen?
Yes.
Wow.
In a new
crazy.
town we'd never been to before.
Wow.
Yeah.
But you had been to Costa Rica. You kind of
got the
knew.
vibe,
Yeah.
but we had never been to this particular town before, and we put it down on a new construction and took a really big chance. It took 3 years to close, which is a whole nother, it was not fun, but tons of lessons learned.
Yeah. So yeah, we haven't closed yet, but we're in escrow and I'm excited about it. Cause like you said, the cost to build out there is very low compared to the States. It's just a beautiful, beautiful place. I always want to call it an island, but it's not.
It's not an island.
I'm like, it's a beautiful island. And then people are like, you're an idiot. And
It's got the same vibe though.
it does have island vibes.
Yeah.
People are great. The weather's great. Like I have literally no complaints about it. And I think it's actually going to be, in my opinion, I go to Cabo a lot. And my first vacation destination I was ever looking at buying in was Cabo. And I'm looking at the prices and I'm like, what the heck is going on here? This is as expensive as California. It's supposed to be Mexico and cheap.
Yeah.
And it's not.
Yeah. It's Newport Beach further south.
Yeah. And then I looked at Costa Rica and it actually has really good pricing and the experience. And you see all the development that's going on in Guanacaste. And I'm like, oh, this is the next Cabo.
It is. Absolutely is. And it's easier to get to than people think. And I think most people find traveling internationally, I say, oh, come visit. And it just seems so inaccessible to people in the States. But I think, in the same flight it could take from New York to LA, you can go, from somewhere in the United States down to Costa Rica. It's the same typical flight, but I think people are just resistant to this idea of international. But I mean, heck, we have a Costco and a Walmart 20 minutes from us.
Yeah.
Closer than I have when I'm home.
Yep.
So it's actually got a lot of the conveniences you're used to. I think if you open yourself up to it, you'd be so surprised seeing the resources down there, but also the culture.
Yeah. And I'll say too, the thing I like about it better than Cabo is like Cabo's beaches are kind of non-existent. The waters are too rough.
Yeah.
Out there in Costa Rica, dude, the water's so warm. Beaches are great. Nothing's inaccessible. It's amazing.
Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah. So let's talk about what you were doing before you started doing CFO services and everything else. How did you get there?
Oh, gosh. Well, lost a bet with my dad in middle school. That's how it started. And then became an accountant. And I studied accounting, did the CPA exam, did all the things that you're supposed to do along the path in your career, worked at a Big Four firm for about 7 years, worked in corporate, a whole variety of different things, consulting, and just got burnt out and tired and realized that there's a lot more power that you have when you work in a corporate job that you don't realize is translatable to entrepreneurship. I think they kind of keep you in this mental cage of you can only apply what you've learned here and that it won't translate once you leave and that you're gonna have to start over.
Right.
But kind of like a video game, you're not starting over at level 1, you're starting over at level 1 with all the weapons, skills, and knowledge you have from level 13. So you're gonna tear through it.
Right.
And that's what I had to learn as I went was, wait, I'm not starting from scratch, stripped away of all my skills, and they don't erase your memory like Men in Black.
Yeah.
You're going to start over in entrepreneurship with all the knowledge and equipment you have with you. And that was a huge mindset shift for me to jump over into entrepreneurship.
Yeah. I think it's interesting because CPAs by nature are very risk averse.
100%.
They're number crunchers. They want to know every little detail. And here's what I tell people. If you're trying to become an entrepreneur, you cannot be super detail oriented.
You can't.
Because you'll psych yourself out of what actually needs to be done. Because you're gonna be like, oh, I need to know X, Y, Z, and then I'll do it. And it's like, even if you did know X, Y, Z, it'd probably be like, oh, you know what? That's too much. That's too scary.
But it's the impact of it. And it's understand the magnitude of impact and zooming out to go like, how is this going to matter? right? Like, how is this? People are too close to the decimal point. Accountants are way too close to the decimal point and looking at the tens and hundreds of dollars. We're looking at the tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars and going, how is that going to impact us? That's really where you want to be focusing your attention. You're walking over dollars to pick up pennies.
Right. Entrepreneurs, if you want to grow your business, there is no better investment than your own personal brand. The smartest thing I ever did was start creating content and investing into my brand. Ever since then, we've been able to triple our business. I've been able to raise more money than ever to continue buying more real estate. And it's all because I create content just like this. Now, a lot of people have asked me, Ryan, how am I supposed to do it? I don't know where to start. I don't know who's going to edit it. I don't know even what kind of setup or camera or anything to do. Well, here's the thing. We can help you with all of that at Pineda Media. We have a podcast checklist that you can actually get for free at pinedamedia.com that's going to go over everything you need on starting a podcast. But to make matters even better, we'll actually edit your podcast for you. We'll repurpose it into short form clips like you see on my Instagram and my TikTok so that people will start seeing those clips and watching your podcast and in turn being customers or investors in your business. So if you want the one-stop solution where you can get everything done for you, plus get the education you need to grow your personal brand, then you need to go to pinedamedia.com and book a free call with our team. You can also go get that free podcast checklist and that training program absolutely free by just going there. So go check it out. If you actually just look at the statistics of starting a business, it's not good. It's not pretty. 4 out of 5 fail within a few years. I think Brandon Dawson was in here and he was telling me after 10 years, literally 90% are gone. And, you know, when you hear those odds, you're like, man, I don't know if I want to start a small business.
Yeah.
But what I will say is, as an entrepreneur, most entrepreneurs, you know, it's not like they're just stopping being an entrepreneur. They're just doing different things. Like, oh, you know what? I did this. Like, for example, I take a look at my real estate brokerage. I had it for, I want to say like 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
It's no longer around. And it's not that it failed. It still made money. It was just like
deprioritized.
Yeah, I no longer need to do this. I'm doing these.
Right.
And so I see why so many fail.
Yeah. And I think the statistic can be inflated too by those who pivot or shut down a business to go start something else.
Maybe which is that?
They learn their lessons from one and they apply them to the next thing. And that it hits a reset button. So the statistics are interesting, but I do think that there is a sort of pervasive problem with new entrepreneurs, new business owners with managing their cash flow and really getting into, I feel like they're learning the skills of entrepreneurship in the first couple of years. So yes, some are going to fail because some can't keep up with that learning curve.
Yeah, like it legitimately fails. They got to go back to a job.
Right.
So what did you learn working at one of these big 4 firms? And what is a big 4 firm for those who don't know?
So the big 4 are the 4 biggest accounting firms. They used to be the big 8. They have dwindled down to the big 4 as they merge and acquire each other. So you've got PricewaterhouseCoopers, Ernst & Young, Deloitte, and KPMG. And you may have heard these in the news before, unfortunately. When usually something goes south, one of them gets blamed for it.
Yeah. By the way, speaking of things like going south, I've realized that over the years, it's like the more business you do, the more things go south, the more you're going to be in the news. And that's life.
You're going to have to handle just what comes with that. And so working at the big 4, you know, we worked with Fortune 50 companies. We were traveling a lot and working with bigger line items, bigger decisions, signing off on their financial statements that we're going to go into, you know, into prospectuses and mutual funds and all this stuff. And it's not even, it sounds boring just saying it. Like I'm already going, I'm falling asleep, just hearing like prospectus, mutual fund, all this stuff. But it mattered because in using the skills, we were learning how to problem solve on the fly. We were given in the big 4, you're given like, hey, you need to do a presentation on IFRS 9 on Monday. And I'm like, what's that? You're going to figure it out. Like you were kind of given, was it trial by fire?
Yeah.
So you were given, like, you need to go do this project. You're now the loan accounting expert on Monday. Congratulations. Go become an expert over the weekend. And the biggest skill I took away from that was the ability to quickly, it's not a fake it till you make it thing. It's a make it and make it fast. Like make it flippin' fast. And you were kind of rushed into, you need to do this by this day, go. So I have this propensity for action and urgency as a business owner. And that's also what I've taken to my own firm when I built it was, we got to do this now, like no wasting time.
Yeah. One thing that people say when they come work here at whatever company it is, they're like, the speed at which you guys move is crazy.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what do you mean? They're like, well, you want this done by tomorrow and this done, and then you're going to do this, this, and this. Usually that should take a week or whatever the case is. I'm like, why? just get it done.
Yeah.
And then you find a way to get it done.
Yeah.
You know,
I would rather have my team be creative in ways to do it faster than to expand and, slow it down. I mean, there are certain things that will take time and have dependencies, right, when you project manage, but to the extent that it's in their control, why not just have that little bit of challenge?
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think as humans, if you're going to be successful, the goal is to keep growing. And the only way to grow is to be pushed and see what you're capable of.
Agreed.
And, nobody wants to just, as much as we desire comfort, the reality is comfort is boring.
It is, and it keeps you stuck. You don't grow with comfort. It's kind of like when you're building muscles in the gym. You have to break and repair.
Yep.
You have to strengthen them by adding weight. And if you're lifting 5-pound dumbbells your whole life, you're not getting any stronger.
Exactly. You're definitely not getting jacked.
No, you're not.
No, you're gonna, I don't know. So you're gonna look like the weakest person ever.
And not only that, you're going to atrophy. Because even if you're doing that all the time, you're going to be behind.
Yeah.
So if you're not moving forward, you're actually slowing down. It's always a climb.
That's a good point. And you could probably talk to this having worked at these big four and seeing these accounts and everything. But I never understood growing up why businesses had to grow, right? Because like in the stock market, the number one thing they're looking at is like, how much is this going to grow?
Right.
And I'm like, why do they need to grow? Coca-Cola and these guys are big enough. Like, what's the point? And it didn't occur to me until I finally got into business where I'm like, well, if you don't grow, you're definitely not even going to maintain.
No. And the key, I would say one of the biggest ways that's present is talent, because talent is not getting cheaper. Good talent is not getting cheaper.
Right.
So you're going to have to meet these salary expectations. But if you're not increasing your revenue or increasing your marketing or bringing in that cash flow, you're not going to have the cash flow to keep your goals met and to be able to pay top talent to come in. Because unfortunately, the truth of the matter is with any business, the people who are with you are not there forever. It's not their baby.
Yeah.
And you can't expect them to be. You're going to try to develop them and actually grow them out of your business. They're going to overserve their role and then eventually roll through. I'm sure you do this with your team. It's like they'll grow, they'll move on to a promotion, or you'll develop them out of that role because they're so good that it served its purpose for them and for you. So I think that's a really big area where you have to be growing constantly in order to be surviving. Yeah.
You've mentioned cash flow a lot, and you work with a lot of your clients on just these cash flow projections.
Yes.
What did you see at the Big Four that kind of gave you that, I guess, foundation?
I would say it was a lot of, well, truth be told, I didn't see it at the Big Four.
Right.
And that was the problem.
Yeah.
So it was a focus on the financials, the health of the business by looking at the financial statements, which I call the blood work. So if you think about financial statements like blood work, most people don't know how to read it.
Right.
It's a bunch of random numbers.
Yep.
You need somebody to interpret it for you.
Yeah.
To be like, what does this mean? Is this good? Like, is 2.4 good? I don't know. And you get this blood work back and you kind of go, I need somebody to tell me what this means. That's what we would basically do. However, cash flow is like the business's metabolism. It's how you're processing the money, how you're processing and what you're bringing in, what you're putting out, and how fast it's happening.
Yeah.
It infuses timing into that. So we were constantly looking at static financial statements at a point in time and judging the health of a business. Like we would judge somebody's health looking at their weight on a scale.
Yeah, that's the P&L.
Yeah, the P&L or the balance sheet is, I weigh 150 pounds today.
Yeah.
Am I healthy?
Yeah.
I can't answer that question. That's a spot, one point in time. It could change tomorrow. It's changing right now.
Yeah.
There are things happening in the business constantly. If you're moving at the speed that you are, or I am, there's things changing constantly. So with cash flow, the important thing is understanding how you're processing cash in your business. And I think that was one of the biggest problems we would see either with companies or with my small businesses I work with is just management of that, with staying outside the P&L. The P&L tells you one thing, balance sheet tells you another thing. You can't look at one of those things in isolation and judge the health of the business.
Yeah. And I think too, when you're talking about P&L and everything, you're just looking at the end result of what happened.
Yes.
And you can go look at, all right, well, it looks like we spent too much in, salaries or expenses or, marketing didn't play out, right?
Right.
And so you're looking at it and you're saying, okay, well, let's see why this didn't work out, right? So you start looking at, hey, how did we spend these marketing dollars and all that? And you can start to kind of diagnose why that happened. But to your point, cash flow, the way I always tell people, especially real estate, because in real estate, everyone's broke. Like cash just keeps going out all the time because it's one of these businesses that is so capital intensive to make money.
Yes.
Like with your tax business, it's like you got your employee overhead And it's not like this crazy thing. You don't have crazy cash cycles like we do in real estate where it's like, oh, I bought 5 deals this month. Literally millions went out. Yeah. And then guess what? Millions came in like randomly as they sold and whatever.
And it's unpredictable.
Yeah. And you don't know when it's going to happen.
And you have to act quick and make decisions quickly. There is no, let me think about this for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
You have to strike it. So there's a lot of that unpredictability and a lot of that volatility in the sense that you're going to make decisions today immediately that will impact the coming weeks, months, years. And you have to just be able to be adaptable to that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I'm fine with it. And I love it. But it's just like, to me, that was just normal. I go, well, yeah, if you're going to flip a house, you got to buy it and you're going to wait 4 or 6 months and you're going to get your money back and your profit.
Yeah.
The problem is if you don't manage your cash flow properly, you run out of money. Right. If you buy too many deals, you run out of money.
It's monopoly.
Yeah. And it could be great deals, but you're out of money.
Right.
And now you can't pay your overhead and all these things. And on paper, you got a positive net worth. Everything looks good, but you ran out of cash. And that's what I kind of tell all of our students at Wealthy Investor. I'm like, guys, sometimes it's okay not to buy a deal, even if it's going to make you money, because if you don't make it to next month, it doesn't matter.
That decision is a decision in multiple dimensions. And you have to be able to say yes to something or say no to something, but they say yes to something else by saying no to one thing. And if the priority is to maintain the cash flow, absolutely.
Yeah.
You want to make sure that you're saying an intentional yes, but in the context of that decision.
Wealth Builders, if you are trying to grow your real estate investing business, then you need to join us at Wealthy Investor. If you have no idea what Wealthy Investor is, it is our coaching program and community. We have helped thousands of students worldwide grow their business. Now, it doesn't matter if you're just getting started and you're trying to get that first deal. We can help you do that. If you're trying to scale your business and go from a few deals a year to a few deals a month, or even 7 figures a year, we can help you do that too. In fact, last year alone, we had over 30 students do over $1 million in revenue. And I'd love for you to be the next one. So it's pretty simple. If you're trying to grow your business and wholesale more homes or flip more homes or buy more rental properties, then you need to go to wealthyinvestor.com and book a free call with our team. It's super simple. We'll go on a strategy call with you and figure out how we can help you grow according to your needs. So all you got to do is go to wealthyinvestor.com, book the free call with the team, and we'll see you there. I just see it all the time with real estate investors that it's very difficult to manage cash flow because of the unpredictability. Mm-hmm. How do you beat that?
I mean, you can't make it predictable. We're not Miss Cleo. I have no magic 8 ball. I have no crystal ball. But one thing we can do is we put together these hypotheticals. And like, it's not the woo-woo stuff. I'm not very big into the woo-woo things. But what I do is when you introduce these scenarios to a business owner and you say, well, if this, then this. So if this happens, the next domino moves this way and the next domino moves this way. You can create these scenarios for business owners where they realize the impact and the flow of when this happens, then this will happen next, or this is where I want to head next. They can see the path in front of them. It's like programming a destination in a GPS and seeing the turns that are coming up. Mm-hmm. And we can do these different scenario builds. So we'll do a cash flow forecast, but we'll do it the most conservative, the most aggressive, and find something in between with a lot of what ifs built into it to figure out, okay, we're going to be good even in the worst case scenario.
Right.
And if that's the case, go for it.
Yeah.
Take a risk because we're good even in the worst case scenario painted there. And I also think that there's something psychological with business owners. If they see what will happen, they can see the future in numbers or see what will happen if they make a certain decision. It does affect the decision and it affects how they consume the information because now they're interested. Now they're kind of like leaning in and saying, oh, wow, I didn't know this was possible. And I say, yeah, I couldn't tell you how many business owners I work with who hit their first $1 million a year with me. We mapped it out for them and they were like, that's all I have to do to hit $1 million. Mm-hmm. And we broke it down and stripped it down into just actions or numbers of clients and numbers of offers to sell. And although it's so simple, Ryan, to go, it's this divided by this, like it's just a very simple formula. It's very hard to grasp when you have to sell it. Yeah.
And I wouldn't say it's even simple because when people, for instance, I'll do like a training or something mm-hmm. and it'll be about how to flip houses.
Yeah.
And people will sometimes be in the comments like, dude, flipping a house is easy. You just, you buy the house, you fix it up and you sell it. I'm like, yeah, I mean, that is the simplicity of it.
Yeah.
But how do you get the deal? How do you raise the money? How do you hire the contract?
Simple, not easy.
Yeah, it is a simple thing to grasp. There are things that are not simple, like being a CPA.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, well, if I'm going to explain to you what the balance sheet is, it's going to take some time.
Yeah.
It's not so simple. So yeah, there are simple things. And I think as an entrepreneur, I do tend to want to just think about things simply, because that's how you take action. Because there's a lot of things I've done in my life where if I would have known all the details beforehand, I'd have been like, no way. That's too much work. It's too risky. It's too whatever. But because I didn't know and I just went into it with a simple mindset, you know, you solve problem after problem after problem. And then a year later, you look at it and you're like, dang, dude, that was a lot of work, but I'm glad I did it.
But that's the value you provide now, is that you went through that.
Yeah.
You know all those things now, have the information to go back and say, well, I probably wouldn't have made that same decision. But if you didn't, you wouldn't know that.
Yeah.
So it's this whole catch-22 idea of it. But that's why it's so valuable what you and other creators are doing in teaching that to other people, to say, hey, here are the, the speed bumps or the potholes I hit along the way, just so you know.
Yeah, 1,000%. So what was it like when you finally made that decision? You know, how much were you making? You know, were you just simply forecasting like, you know what, we're good. The side hustle is going to be good.
Yeah.
Like, did you build it up? You built them both up. How was that?
I built them both up, but I was burning out like crazy, and I was hitting the pre-tax season December, and I had to make a call. And I just said to my husband, we sat down because we do all of this together, and I said, listen, I know you're supposed to be the business owner. I'm supposed to be the mortgage payment. Like, I'm supposed to have the steady paycheck. I totally get it. But this side hustle that I'm building, if I'm spending 10 to 15 hours a week building this, or 20 hours a week building this, and I called it the 7 to 10, right? It was like the morning and the evening. And if I'm doing this and I can make, 250, 300 grand a year, which is where I was at in revenue, I said, imagine what I can do when I'm 40 plus hours a week and I'm loving it. And I said, I just need that time. I hit a capacity.
Yeah.
This is how much time I can spend. This is how much money I can make in that time. And it wasn't necessarily trading time for money, but it was how much time I could legitimately spend without investing all that money into a team, and then therefore having no cash flow to get myself out of the job. So it was this balance of priorities going. It was the chess pieces moving in the right order. So it was get Shannon out of the job, have me invest time, then use that time to make money, and then invest the money in buying back the time.
Right.
It's just that constant cycle of entrepreneurship.
Right. Yeah. One of my favorite people in the world, his name's Dan Martell. He spoke at WealthCon, our last one in July, but he has a book called Buy Back Your Time.
Yeah.
And very good book for anyone who's listening. But I think it's important that you said that, because a lot of people are currently, the majority of people have a 9 to 5, whatever you would call it, but they want more, right? They want freedom. They want to make more money.
Yeah.
They want to have their own thing. And so, like, I think this era of the side hustle or entrepreneur is very, like, it just continues to get big, because everybody at this point is probably an entrepreneur to some degree. Like, even all my own employees, like, they work for me, but they got stuff going on the side too, which I think is great. But what people don't understand is that for it to be truly successful and become more than a side hustle, it takes time. And you're going to have to do both simultaneously, unless you're just willing to quit cold turkey and bet on it. Yeah,
unless you have good savings, another good income source, right? You have to have that cushion. But it's also not static where you have to build up a cushion and then you can just jump. It's all happening at the same time. And it's just a matter of when you're getting off what train. But they're all moving. And
I'm glad you brought that up, because it's not that, hey, I'm going to save up, then I'm going to do this.
Right.
Because
not linear.
You're just not even going to get to saving up. Right?
No, because you're never going to save up. It's like, you're never going to lose the 10 pounds.
Yeah.
It's like, when I lose 10 pounds, I'll go get a trainer. Okay, we're still waiting. You know? And you're going to give yourself an impossible milestone because you don't have the tools to get the money to save up yet. And that's the very thing that is actually going to equip you with the tools. So it's this kind of ironic circle you're going to go through. And I would say the best thing to do is just do it. And actually, where we landed, me and my husband, I actually presented a pitch to him, because we're both business people. You should have seen having our pre-marriage conversation was like a merger conversation.
How long you guys been married?
We've been married, oh gosh, what year is it? 6 years.
6 years.
6 years. We've been together for 7. And when we got, we were in our late 20s, early 30s when we got married. So we had a merger of 2 separate net worths.
Yeah.
So we were very clear on, hey, show me your tax return, I'll show you mine, right? This was the whole conversation. We were nerds, right? So we were focused on that. And the conversation I had with Jason, my husband, was, hey, here's the deal. Give me 6 months. give me from January to June, let me get through a tax season, and let me show you by June that I can self-sustain this and I can bring home the cash flow we need based on this projection. If I cannot do that, I will find another job, but it ain't this one. And I gave, because there isn't a start and stop, like you said, it's not linear. It's not like I quit my job and now I am banned from corporate America for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
No, get another job. There's plenty of jobs.
Yeah.
We have a marketable skill set, right? I'm a CPA. I go,
you're always be in demand.
Exactly. We'll always be in demand. So if you have a marketable skill set, which is really so many skill sets right now, there is almost no reason. There's no worst case scenario other than going back to your job. And if you're living in your worst case scenario, you got nowhere to go but up.
Yeah. And if you worked at one of the big four, the other three will hire you.
In a heartbeat. And not that I would ever want to go back there, but there's so many places that will hire a solid accountant. And when you're confident in your skills and you know you can deliver quality, that's all that matters, because someone will hire you. You'll find the right team. You'll find the right fit. And entrepreneurship is not for everybody.
Right.
I think that everyone thinks they have to work in this horrible corporate job or they have to go start their own business. And I'm like, there is stuff in between. You can work for another entrepreneur. You can, help build another business, or you can go off on your own, but just understand that if that doesn't work out for whatever reason, you're not a failure. It doesn't mean anything about you personally. You can always go back to finding another job and give yourself that 6-month runway to try and to go all in on it, just to commit to it.
Yeah. No, I love it. And truthfully, to your point, for anyone listening that wants to start their own business, I freaking love it. I'm your biggest cheerleader. I want everyone to start their own business and have freedom, make a bunch of money, have great relationships, everything. But there's two ways to go about it. The first is, to your point, you are already very successful, or maybe you have a spouse that's able to sustain the family, and you can go take that freedom to go try it. I think that's great. If you want to go cold turkey, full into it, I love it. What's most likely going to happen, though, is that you're going to have to do what you did, where you're going to work both simultaneously. And the goal is to get the side hustle at least to the point. You don't have to surpass, but it's like, get it to the point where you're like, I know this will work. And if I could just take these hours and add it here, it's going to be far greater and I'm going to enjoy it more.
Exactly. The two trains have to be moving. Get off on one, get on the other. When they hit the same stop, and keep going. Yeah. Absolutely.
So I agree with that. Tell me this, how does it work in your marriage with, two different business owners going at it? Because you don't see that very often, like where both are business owners of separate businesses.
Yes. It works really great. When I first met Jason, I asked to look in his QuickBooks and his business.
What was his business?
His business is waterproofing. So waterproofing and foundation repair in Connecticut. And
I was going to say, is he doing the freaking black tar thing?
Like, no. Oh man.
Flexi Seal?
Oh, he hates that thing
Can't Flex Seal just take all of his business?
It's the duct tape of waterproofing, right? No, he does that with sump pumps and dehumidification. He's an indoor environmentalist, if you will. And he is killing it. He worked a job for 6 months coming out of school. He graduated early from McGill, worked a job for 6 months, and then said, I can do this better. At 22, started his own business. And it's now 17 years strong. 17 years? Yeah.
And so it's a local business in Connecticut.
Local business in Connecticut. I mean, you guys in Vegas don't really need our services until yesterday.
Yeah. They said we were going to have a hurricane. I'm like, what is going on here?
I know. I was nervous. I was like, how are the flights going to be? But so Jason does basement waterproofing, foundation repair. He's very much in the trades, but he is an entrepreneur at heart. Yeah. Full blood entrepreneur and just so business savvy. I came in from the corporate background with the books and the details and the systems and knowing the corporate, how to navigate a corporate organization and navigate communication. And I think that we bring such unique skill sets to everything that we just came from different worlds of business. Yeah, no, 100%. So what happened? Do you guys plan to have kids or anything? Like, what do you think is going to happen there? We would love to have children. We are contemplating adoption, actually, and we're contemplating fostering. But the plan is to start a family, especially now that I'm completely location agnostic and he has to spend less time in the business. We're going, this is actually a great opportunity because people always make the excuse of like, we're not ready, not enough time. Yeah. And congratulations, by the way, you just had your third. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. There's no good time to have a kid. And no. And not just literally what happened with you guys, but there's no good time to have a kid. It's just going to happen. You just have to commit to it and say, this is going to be part of our life now. So we're looking forward to the day that comes when we start a family. But right now we're deciding what country we want to stay in. So it's a little challenging. I guess what I'm interested in is
how are you guys going to manage raising kids? You know, if you're both entrepreneurs running your business, like what's the plan? I know you're remote, so like you can theoretically just manage.
We are, I mean, it's a really big priority for us to manage how the kid learns, and we're going to teach them about business hands down. Like there's no, you can't escape. Like we're going to be the most boring parents. They're going to thank us one day. No, we're really, and language is big too. We want them to be raised Spanish outside the US and Costa Rica as well, and get that perspective.
Are you on Duolingo?
Duolingo. My husband is on Rosetta Stone. I've been speaking Spanish since I was 11.
Oh, you're good then.
I'm fluent.
Okay. Yeah, I'm on Duolingo. I'm like 160 days in. I still suck. Like it's not.
I get by down there. It's actually great. There's actually an element of respect people have when you can walk up to them and speak fluent Spanish. They're like, oh, okay. She's not like a stupid gringo.
Did your parents speak Spanish, or how'd you learn?
No, we're Irish, French, Canadian, and English. And I actually studied Spanish. I went to take Spanish in school when I was 11. You know how you take Spanish or French in America. I wanted to take French because all my girlfriends were, but my dad said, no daughter of mine is going to find herself on spring break in Montreal trying to get a cab to get home. You're taking Spanish.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what that meant. I'm 11 and I'm like, what's spring break?
Yeah.
So he basically said, you're taking Spanish. And here we are. I actually.
So you learned it from actual high school and stuff.
Actual high school and stuff. And then I minored in it. And I just loved it. I took to it so quickly. And I wanted to teach language. That was actually my passion. I said, my favorite subject is Spanish. And my dad said, that's awesome. But do you want to keep going to Disney World?
Yeah.
Do you want to keep doing this? You need to be teaching this language. And he pointed to the language of business.
Math
and accounting. Well, it's accounting. Yeah. He dared me to take an accounting class in high school and said, if you love it, or if you hate it, I'll never bug you again to become an accountant or do business.
Right.
But if you love it, you have to major in it.
Yeah.
And here we are.
What would you say for me if I want to learn Spanish? What should I do?
You have to immerse yourself and try, because one thing about especially Costa Ricans is just by trying and having a few words in the sentence and speaking a little Spanglish, they will immensely respect you, give you high fives, hugs, the whole nine, and they will just welcome you in for trying, because there are so many people who don't try and are just speaking English louder, thinking that's going to help. And you just want to be very respectful of the culture and learn as you go, ask questions. And we actually have in Coco, where we live, there's actually a Spanish club where this woman will take you around, go to the coffee shop and teach you how to order. Yeah. And there are people there that will teach you and be very patient. So immersion is everything. That's what Jason's doing.
I don't have a choice. I just have to move there to learn. Like I'm not going to learn it here.
You can learn it, but I think that you have to immerse yourself in it and be practicing all the time and speaking it, because Jason learned it, my husband, from reading. Another thing is sign up for the local Facebook groups, like the local news Facebook groups. Okay. You can start piecing together the news story by process of elimination of what's going on. So you might see a headline and then realize, oh, this is about a shooting that took place over here because of this or because of that. And then you realize what the words mean in context, because you know the context already.
Got it.
So if you already know the story, you can kind of figure out what the words are telling you, because they kind of relate to English. And I don't know if you know I know like the Filipino language is also, Tagalog is a little bit influenced by Spanish.
Yep.
You can kind of figure out the gist of it. And Jason, actually, he's brilliant. He figured out how to read Spanish, and I no longer have a language I can speak that he can't. So it's a bummer. I can't talk about him in front of other people anymore.
There you go. I thought about watching like Netflix shows in Spanish and stuff.
He watched Narcos in Spanish, which was not an effective strategy, because now he knows every swear word in Spanish. He knows how to piss off a drug cartel.
I already knew all the swear words, because when I was playing baseball, I just had all these Dominicans and Venezuelans, and it seemed like that was the only words they knew. And so that was what we did.
It's the most common word in Narcos is a certain word. And Jason kept testing it, like hooked on. Like he would go in and be like saying it over and over. And I'm like, honey, like stop saying that so much. Like, don't say that too loud. So he's learning though. And I'm really proud of him. But I've just immersed myself in the language from age 11. I worked at McDonald's for 6 years when I was growing up.
Really?
Oh, my dad made me the day I turned 14. He was like, get a work permit. You're done.
You can work at 14?
Yes, you can.
Whoa.
Yeah, in Massachusetts. So I worked at 14. Day I turned 14. He's like, gravy train stops here. Go put some fries down.
Now I got to hear about your dad, because he's like, this dude's intense.
He's so cool.
What did he do?
He was a CPA.
Oh, he also was a CPA.
He was a CPA.
But he's a hardcore CPA.
He was a hardcore dad. He was a hardcore CPA. But he was like, no putzing around. He just said, my daughter is going to, he knew very, very soon that I was I was not a laborer. I wasn't going to work with my hands.
Yeah.
He was like, this girl needs to learn business.
Do you think that he like wanted to mold you into a CPA?
100%. He wanted me to take over his firm.
Okay. So because people have asked me that a lot back way before business. They're like, do you think your kids are going to play baseball? And I was like, if they want, I don't really care.
Yeah.
And they're like now saying, do you think your kids will run the businesses? I'm like, if they want, I don't really care. Like whatever they want to do.
Whatever they want.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that surrounding yourself by seeing the context of what's possible and seeing what other people are doing successfully, it does influence you because they may not want to run your businesses. And I didn't take over my dad's firm.
Yeah.
I was adamant. I said, I really like what I'm doing. I'm traveling the world with this big 4 company. I'm getting all these opportunities to work with Fortune 50 companies. I'm seeing things I never would have seen.
Yeah.
I'm living in New York 8 months a year in Times Square. It's like fabulous, right in your 20s. And then my dad died in 2013. And I immediately was like, I had this kind of settling of, I don't think I want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
Because they gave me a 3-day bereavement leave and still called me with work questions during it.
Right.
And I was like, damn, after all this time I gave you guys, like 70-hour weeks and all this stuff, you can't give me 3 days to grieve the loss of my father.
Crazy.
And that was the tipping point. And I said, this isn't for me. Like you guys will never care about me as much as I have cared about you. And I just immediately said, I have to start coming up with a plan to shift and do whatever I want. And my dad guided me up until his deathbed. He told me every career move to make. He's like, stay till manager, take these classes, don't take these classes together, don't do this together. And I followed all of his advice. And literally on his deathbed, which we didn't know at the time, I said, Dad, what do I do? I'm really unhappy in my job. And he goes, whatever the F you want. I'm done. I'm done giving you guidance. You did everything I told you to do. You now have the ability, because of this big 4 name on your resume, the fact that you were a manager, the fact that you've done all these things, you've done everything I've asked you to do. Now you can do whatever you want because you have built that foundation. I'm so proud of you. And that was like, and I was overwhelmed because so many choices.
Well, I think the one thing your dad did really well was he encouraged you to seek out skills.
Yes.
He's like, hey, I want you to learn hard work and what it's like at the bottom at McDonald's. I want you to go learn accounting. It's going to be around forever. You're going to understand how business works.
100%.
I want you to, you're passionate about language. Cool. Learn it. That's fine. But be multifaceted in what you're doing.
It's like you can apply Spanish doing anything.
Yeah.
He said, keep that up, but you're only going to be able to enjoy it and have free time if you have an occupation like
a business
this one.
skill. Right.
A business skill.
What did you learn at McDonald's?
Everything. Everything about life, from Spanish. I have a Guatemalan godmother because of that job. She made me speak Spanish the whole time I was there, which is why I learned
nice.
it. But I learned, they had us, I was amazed, Ryan, because I was doing inventory at 14. I was managing the cash registers and the deposits at 16. They had me closing down at 1 a.m. by myself with another woman in the grill at 1 a.m. at age 16. And I'm going, what's wrong with you guys? Like, I'm looking back going, why would you let me do that? There were like drunk people in the drive-thru. Couldn't tell you how many times I had to call the cops.
Yeah.
And I handled it in stride because it was normal.
You didn't know any better.
I didn't know any better. And it kind of gave me this no BS attitude and this, like, I've been there, done that. I felt like I got a crash course in business for 6 years, better than an MBA.
Yeah. How far did you make it? Like what?
I made it to, I was the hiring manager. They wanted to offer me to go to Hamburger University, which is a very real thing.
So okay.
Which is the training camp for if you wanted to be a franchisee and you wanted to grow with the company and work for corporate or anything. They wanted to send me to HAMU, they called it.
HAMU?
I know, in Illinois.
How long's that?
I don't know. I think it was like a couple of summers. It was like business training camps for managers.
Okay.
And I politely said, no, I have an internship at my big 4 firm, and it's kind of why I'm going to college, so I don't have to do that. But I was like the third in command, I guess, in the store because I was 18. I'd been there for 4, and then I was 22, 6 years, and trained all the new people, developed the training manuals. I took all the serve safe exams. So I still know to this day, like what temperature the nuggets have to be stored at or something. Like they drill that into you so well with their systems.
Yeah.
It gave me such an appreciation for operations.
Yeah.
Because I learned systems and operations from the kings of it. And now in my business, I have such a great way of handling that and knowing how it can be implemented effectively.
Yeah. It's amazing just like how plug and play they are.
They really
everywhere,
are.
worldwide.
And the amount of detail they have, all the way down to the temperature something has to be stored at, to where to put things in the warehouse area, like how to store things together, or exactly how many ounces of that Sprite mix to put in the Sprite.
Wow.
It's down to the micro measurements, and you have to memorize them to hit a certain level.
What do you think separates, now being in business a long time, what do you think separates like McDonald's from Chick-fil-A? Why is Chick-fil-A like even on a totally different level?
I honestly think it's the service, because you're going to get consistent customer service. And I actually think because they niche down into the chicken,
it's easier.
It's easier. It's higher quality. It's known for that one thing, as opposed to expanding the menu into the McRib.
You guys McDonald's has like, I don't know how much inventory you need or how many different like recipes
so many things
you need to learn.
Yeah. And like the things is, and the staff hate cooking it too, because there's like one-off random chicken flatbread thing that took forever to make, but everyone ordered it, or the apple pies that had to get cooked. And it's a lot of, when you add variety, you add complexity, and you add confusion, and you add error. So by keeping it to one core thing, which was really the chicken, I think Chick-fil-A just crushed it, because they also could create a culture around it, and they really went in on their brand as a customer service focused thing, and of course their values and other things like that.
Yeah. Well, I just watch what they do with just the drive-through and how cool. You're like, dude, look at this drive-through. And then you're like just going through it like it's nothing.
Yeah.
And thinking about one of my favorite movies ever is The Founder. And I think about what made McDonald's successful in the beginning. It was like, dude, they have 9 ingredients. That was like the thing.
Yes.
And that's what's made Chick-fil-A successful. It's why In-N-Out is successful. But then you look at like your big fast food places like McDonald's, Wendy's, Burger King, Carl's Jr. They have like a million things.
Yeah. And it's confusing. You go up to the drive-thru and you're like, I need a second.
Why do they do that?
I don't know. I think it's tempting that if something's working, let's try to do it again with something else, as opposed to perfecting what we're doing and replicating and doing other things around it. So it's kind of like what business owners are doing. And actually, this happened to me. I was building a bookkeeping, tax, and CFO practice, because I was like, I can do all these things.
Right. Which you can.
Which I can.
Yep.
However, when I stripped it down to recently, in the last year, I was like, I'm just doing CFO.
Yeah.
I want to deliver like Costco does with the hot dog. I'm like, I want consistency, and I want people to be like, I know who to go to for that service.
Well, hopefully your prices go up though with inflation.
Yeah, exactly. Well, they did raise it. Finally, they did raise it.
Oh, the hot dog is what?
I heard they raised it finally, which is, I call it the hot dog
index. It's $1.75 now or what?
Yeah, something like that. And they said, inflation's high. Like, I'm just looking at the Costco price.
Is the chicken still $5?
I hope so.
I haven't been in a Costco in years.
Oh, and you got to go to Price Mart in Guanacaste.
Okay.
Excellent. But they have, so the consistency thing and delivering that one thing with excellence, I realized is the key.
Yeah.
It's that one customer, one product. It's like what Alex Hormozi says, right? The one iteration, and just replicate it and perfect it. And I think that too soon, a lot of businesses will enter into variety before they really get into the value of what they're doing. And I think they get bored.
Yeah.
I think they get bored with the one thing, and they will expand, and they think that's growth.
Yeah.
But I go, actual scalability is simplification and replication. And people think they're scaling.
Yeah.
When actually just expanding their offers and adding complexity to it.
For sure. I've been very guilty of this.
So have I.
Yeah.
Classic Gemini for me.
Very guilty. So let's talk about your business, right? So you have CFO now. Like that's the main thing. Like for those wondering, what does that even mean?
Yeah. And it's different for everyone who talks about it.
Right.
So you have to get the ingredient list, right? Like, here's what's included. So what we do is, for CFO services at its core, is taking the books, taking the taxes, taking all that data, turning it into decisions, helping the founder with strategic decisions and strategic advisory that they can use to make those decisions. So what do we answer in terms of questions is really the way I would phrase it. We answer like, can I hire someone? How much can I pay them? What should I be allocating to this? How much am I spending on ads? Is my return on ad spend healthy right now? Is it going up or down? What are the trends you're seeing right now in my business? How does it relate to my industry? How does it relate to industry competitors of my size?
Yeah.
Am I on pace with what the market's doing? Am I hitting my goals? And this is the biggest thing. What are your personal goals as the founder? Is it, I want to send my daughter to private school next year? Cool. How much do you need to do that? Great. We need to create an extra 10 grand in cash flow per month to make, or 10 grand in top line to create, let's say 2 grand in cash flow per month.
Yeah.
And now that's what we're trying to do. So now we extract for that 10 grand in top line. How much do we need to be selling? What do we need to change? What do we need to create in efficiency? And if we need to create 2 grand in cash flow, then what can we do to cut the costs? Or what can we do to streamline the operation? So there's a ton of really strategic thought processes going on. If you think about it, the CFO is like the person in the chair next to you in the boardroom with the whiteboard on the wall going, how do we make this happen?
Right.
Using the numbers with our advantage. So that's really the CFO role. But what we do is we take it from, we have a bookkeeper in-house. I do the tax return in-house. So we just take it end to end so that you don't have to play that game of playing telephone among about 3 or 4 different professionals.
Yeah. No, I love it. Where do people go to get that?
You can go to fitfinancialsolutions.com. I'll give you a link as well, but you can learn about how to enroll in our CFO services, or we also do single sessions with entrepreneurs too, who maybe haven't experienced this before and don't really know what a CFO does. We can do a deep dive into their business and help them with that too.
I love it. Yeah, we'll link to that down below. So for just typical CFO stuff, right? Because you want to go hire a CFO. I mean, obviously it's going to vary on industry, but you're hiring a 6-figure position to get a true CFO. And I've seen, the rise of remote CFOs or fractional CFOs. Yep. And I think it's just such a great solution for businesses at certain sizes.
Yeah. And you can leverage, the cool thing is you can leverage the fractional part. So what you may not realize with a fractional CFO is they're spending part of their time on you.
Yeah.
But it's part of their time on 8, 10, 20 other businesses. So they're actually using the intel from that to serve you.
Yeah.
And vice versa. So there's a lot of information gathering. And personally for me, it's a rewarding job because I get to help all these different types of businesses and see what's going on and be able to help them and help them through content and across the table to different business owners and tell them what's working and what isn't.
Yeah, I'll tell you, one thing I've loved just being in multiple industries is, I've taken my share of punches. I have, succeeded in lots of things. But the one thing that I really love about being diversified in that way is that I do get to take intel, like you said, information, lessons I learned over here and apply them over here.
Yeah.
And that's made me able to grow so much faster because of the lessons I'm learning everywhere versus like if I was just still only a house flipper. It's like I have a very limited knowledge base and skill set. And like, I don't understand that, oh, did you know other businesses like actually make money every day?
Yeah.
And like they bring money in and they don't have to put out all this cash to go do a deal and bring your revenue. And then you go in these other businesses, you're like, wow, okay. And then there's other businesses that, are on monthly recurring revenue. And you're like, wow, okay, I get why companies value those companies so highly.
Yeah.
Just having this consistency in business is rare.
It is. It's really rare. And I think that we have to open our eyes up to other ways of doing things because you get used to that one way or the one way that you were taught. And you also have to be learning all the time about other ways that are working for other business owners because you could be missing out on an opportunity to create that monthly recurring revenue, let's say. Because I think almost any business can create some form of recurring revenue.
Right. Where are you getting your research for, hey, like this is where you should be at, you're making $500,000 a year top line. These are what your competitors or people in your size are spending.
So that's secondary to where you want to be for the sake of your goal. Okay. Because some people don't want to be $1 million business owner. They want to spend more time with their family and not have a big team. We have an honest conversation with the founder on where do you want to be? Do you want to have a bigger team? Do you want to scale? Or do you want to really build a business that works without your time so you can spend time with your family or do whatever you want to do in your spare time?
Yeah.
That is totally fine. And maybe it's real estate and maybe it's taking what you're making from the business and saying, what can you do with that to create that passive income stream or do those types of things? We really have to look at the profile of the founder.
Yeah.
But secondary to that, we're using a lot of research tools online. I use different tools that I have access to through software and through my network to be able to see the ratios and the P&Ls of businesses of the size of my clients, but also just intel from working with so many different businesses and seeing what's working, what isn't, and what angles could be working for them that I've seen be successful, even like ads or lead magnets and things like that.
Yeah. The way I look at it is, obviously you want to have as many relationships and things as possible because you're going to be able to learn so much from all these other people. I mean, we were talking about how I was with Ed Milet yesterday, and I was just asking him all these questions because he's just done so much more than me.
Yeah.
And so to be able to like hear what he was doing when he was in my stage and the moves he was making, you're like, all right, okay, cool, I get it. And it just helps fast track it so much more. But for just businesses in general, one thing I always tell our students is, look, this is how you're going to determine what's important to you. Okay. Yeah. Let's say your business is already making $1 million and you come join our program or you want to get mentorship, whatever. First thing I'm going to ask you is, hey, which would you rather have? Hypothetically, would you still rather work your 60-hour weeks and make, $1.5 or $2 million next year? Or would you rather make $1 million again, but now you work 20 hours a week? And I go, there's no right answer.
Right.
It's just, what do you want to do?
Right.
And that will help us figure out what the best path is going forward.
Yeah, and I think that founders have to get honest with that answer, because there's a lot of pressure in comparison.
Yep.
To say, I should be over here because Ryan is, or because Ed is, or because...
The easy thing is more revenue.
Right. Yeah. They want more revenue. They want to grow. And I say, why? So the number one question I ask a new client or anyone that I'm meeting with, and I say, what's your goal? And immediately, Ryan, every time is a $ measurement. They'll say, what do you want? And they'll say 3 million in revenue. And I go, okay, why? Well, I made 2 million, 2.5 last year, and I feel like I should. I feel like I should be at that growth rate. And I said, okay, why? Well, it's like the 5 whys, right? You keep going through it, extracting it. And then we get to why, and then I go, because I want to pick up my daughter from school every day. And I go, okay, would another $500,000 in revenue enable you to do that? How does that connect?
Yeah.
How does that actually link? And they go, it doesn't. Okay. So here we are. And I said, you know what we need to do? Same revenue, add a constraint. Same revenue, 10 less hours a week.
Exactly.
And then that's where we have to get creative with, that's the new goal.
Yeah.
But everybody's in this growth mode thinking they have to be growing. And I go, sometimes it's just progressing toward your goal.
Yeah.
It's not about growing the top line revenue, especially if you're pouring into a bucket with holes in it and you're spending all the money that you're making anyway and you're maintaining those margins.
Mm-hmm. One thing I will say is you can do both. You can certainly grow and work less. It's just infinitely harder.
Yeah.
It's like now you're adding 2 constraints and you have to be, the only way to really do it is to be extremely innovative and revamp either your entire offering of how you do things, or you're just becoming a savage at hiring and you're now replacing your hours that are going to be even better.
Yeah, it's kind of like trying to diet and go hardcore on like training for a Spartan race at the same time.
Right.
It can be done,
yeah,
but you're kind of pulling at 2 ends right there. And without focusing on one goal versus the other, you're going to be less likely to achieve both of them. And it's going to take you longer and it's going to be much harder. Yeah.
No, I totally agree with that. So what's some of the biggest problems you're seeing with your clients when they come in?
When they come in, it's 100% a lack of awareness of their numbers. So it's I don't want to look at it, or I don't want to see it. I don't want to measure it. Numbers are gross, the mindset. And I work with a lot of women. So unfortunately there is this challenge with a lot of women who maybe weren't raised that they need to be looking at their numbers or with a financial mind. I mean, I'm very grateful for my father, but I acknowledge that his influence is the reason why I'm here. And a lot of people didn't have that. So especially women. So they come to me with this mindset of it's scary. They see numbers as restrictive, as something that will limit them because they can't afford something. When in reality, they don't see it as a tool that will equip them to move forward. So they want to earn more. So they want to make money, but they don't want to look at how much they've made. Mm-hmm. And that was always very confusing to me. It took me a lot of time to figure out the mind of the entrepreneur, because I came from a CPA background going, what do you mean? This is great. Like, numbers are fun. And a lot of people don't feel that way. So it's coming out with a lot of empathy, but also they're coming in with this just horrible allergy to numbers. And that's what we have to overcome first, is get them to on board with seeing their numbers as a tool so that they can be committed to looking at them, measuring them, tracking them, and understanding what they're trying to tell them. Yeah.
Yeah. Knowing your numbers is, I tell people this too. I'm like, how do you make a decision without numbers? Like, are you just doing everything based on gut?
Yeah.
Or are you using
or their bank
data?
account balance?
Yeah.
Like, they just look at the bank account balance. And I go, that's not telling you anything. That's telling you, again, it's the weight on the scale.
Yeah.
And now you're judging your health based on that. And it's just a spot measurement, spot metric. You got to understand how these metrics relate to each other and what the message they're actually telling you.
I mean, it's easy to say you need help when there's no money in the account, though.
Very true.
That's like, all right, something's going on here.
But the hilarious juxtaposition of that statement is like, when there's no money in the account, you need help and you can't afford the help.
You can't afford help. Right.
Exactly.
You know, a lot of what you're doing is pretty much the first step of what I do. Because like I only have a couple of one-on-one clients. I don't even advertise it. But the very first thing I do is I'm like, guys, all right, show me your numbers. Yeah. Let me understand what's going on here.
Yeah.
Most can't do it, right? They know their revenue. They're like, yeah, we made $2 million.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, what'd you net? And some know, some don't know. But regardless of that, the main thing I'm asking them is like, show me your monthly expenses. I want to know what you have allocated towards marketing, payroll, expenses, everything else. And so usually what happens is the moment I get that, I just look at it and I'm like, why are you paying this much in labor for your industry? This doesn't make sense.
Right.
You're not spending anything in marketing. There's a reason you're not growing. Like all these things.
Those targets for them too. We do what's called a profit plan, which is really a word for a budget, but I don't use the word budget because budget has a little stigma attached to it.
It makes it seem like you can't do things.
Yeah, budget feels like stop, limited.
Yeah.
You know, it has that language and that association. So we call it a profit plan. And the profit plan really showcases how much do you want to take home? Okay. And then we break down the allocation, target allocations between team, office, administrative. You know, we break it down into 4 or 5 categories, their core categories based on their industry of how they're going to spend money, and say, here are your target percentages, and we just look at the trends of that to see if they're overspending in an area, under, or if we're going to intentionally focus on one area, what does that mean for the rest of the spending? So we try to give every dollar a purpose so that it's connected to some type of goal.
I love that. What do you think about just like these businesses in general that want to scale? Like, what's your are you giving them advice on, hey, all right, you want to hit 2 million? We got to put more in marketing. You're going to need to, like, how are those decisions going?
It so depends on the business owners, you know, with your one-on-ones and your students, right?
Yeah.
It's all about what they want to do and what they're good at.
Right.
So I'm not going to tell someone to go spend money on ads who has never done ads before. I'm going to say, why don't you dip in $100 and test the ad space? Why don't you have you had a piece of content recently that did really well? Put some money behind that, put a paid ad behind it. But here's what I will do. I will stop at a certain point on advice outside of the CFO scope.
Right.
Because I will say, you need to consider ads. I recommend hiring this ads expert.
Right.
Or go over here and get someone to consult with you. Because I'm not in the position to tell you what to do if I, haven't done it myself in your space. I don't feel equipped to do that. But 2, I want to just understand the financial impact of it and say, you have the potential here to spend this much money on ads. Here's your budget.
Yeah, go find the expert.
Go find the expert and go do it. So I will typically find opportunities based on what their goals are. If it's like, we're going to focus on growth this quarter and we're going to focus on new client acquisition.
Yeah.
Or we'll focus on fulfillment.
Yeah.
Operations, making sure the client service is there, making sure that you've got the right systems in place. Or
Yeah.
we'll be focusing on the back end, which is like legal, finance, HR, hiring, and making sure that you've got the right amounts allocated to all of that. So it depends on the focus area. We kind of look at it on a quarter by quarter basis to say, what are we majoring in this quarter, and be able to focus allocations on that. But generally the advice is usually, if they're trying to scale and they're trying to grow their revenue, it's a lot of the marketing.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of, well, where are we missing opportunities? Like, go to your existing customers. Are you asking them for more business? Is there a recurring or reoccurring revenue opportunity?
Yeah.
Which people don't usually know the difference between those two things. But
Explain it.
A reoccurring revenue opportunity is where you can get someone to buy twice consciously. So I say it's a conscious and unconscious repurchase.
Okay.
So recurring revenue is like a membership, a subscription. Like, you bought it once and you've enrolled in this idea that you're going to pay monthly. You know it's coming and you're getting the same value, same offer. Reoccurring revenue is where you buy one thing and then buy the next thing. Reoccurring revenue, I use as an example, Apple.
Yeah.
I'm going to buy a computer, and then I'm going to buy the cord that goes in the computer because they changed the cord again.
Yep.
And then I'm going to buy the phone and the monitor because it all just works together, because it makes sense that once you buy one Apple product, you're going to buy another one.
Right.
So can you be like that, where there's supplemental revenue from that? Or are you going to do a recurring model where it's just going to be coming in because of a membership or some type of service? And a lot of business owners haven't even thought about that. They're doing what they were educated to do, like technicians.
Yeah. And
they don't realize that the opportunity of growing the revenue through strategic channels like that.
Yeah. One thing we did really well was I started to understand what else people wanted that were already customers. And so we started creating products and, other businesses to fulfill those needs. And, it's worked out really well because I think in most businesses, the biggest cost is customer acquisition.
100%.
And so when you have a customer who's, getting great service, how do you give them other things that they want?
Yeah. And you have to listen.
Yeah.
Because they'll ask for it. But a lot of people dismiss it as criticism or something that they're missing, and their ego comes in. And I go, no, listen to the customers because they have a lot of insight that will be valuable. And it doesn't mean you have to do everything they say.
Yeah.
But capture
But just
every
listen.
piece. Yes.
Like literally everything I've ever started was from listening to the customers. They're like, oh, well, we want, can you just teach us how to do content? And I'm like, all right, fine. We'll start the content program.
Yeah.
And then, we're doing the content program. They're like, we can't find editors. We can't. I'm like, fine, we'll start Pineda Media and do that. Right. That's literally just how it all keeps playing out.
Yeah.
It's just listening to demand. But one thing I'll say for business owners who are listening is, the way you're framing it is definitely one way. The way that I've always thought about it is, how do you add a bolt-on to your business?
Yeah.
And what are some things that this person's going to buy no matter what? Right. And you don't even have the bolt-on doesn't even have to be your own product or anything. It can be you affiliating whatever
100%.
else.
Yeah. Look at the value chain. So look at what horizontal and vertical. So you're going to look at, where are they before me and where are they after me? Do they get off of my train somewhere? And so for me, right, CFO, I'm going to partner with bookkeepers, tax preparers, tax firms, and say, I will take your clients when they've grown to a certain point. Please nurture them in your garden and then pass them on to me, or vice versa. Maybe I'll hit a point where somebody really needs to focus on one particular area and I pass them on to another coach. But what we can do is co-referrals. We can create a value stream among all of them and basically nurture them in the entire client journey and partner with each other. It's the best thing to do is collaborate 100%. There's no competition, only collaboration opportunity.
Yep. And so for us, we affiliate some things, but I'm just like such an entrepreneur that I'm just like, you know what? We'll just create it. Let's do it. Boom, 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 boom. And then, but there are things that we now affiliate and it makes 1,000 times more sense.
It does. And it also requires I get paid to not do the work.
Yeah.
It's great.
No fulfillment. Just here you go.
Yeah.
So speaking of content, you've mentioned it a few times. How many of your clients are actually doing content themselves?
A lot of them are doing content themselves. I think, there's one client in particular that comes to mind who's doing way too much of her content herself, and we're trying to get her out of it.
We need to get her to Pineda Media. We need an affiliate.
We got to get her on there. Yeah.
Yep.
She's an apparel company, and she's doing all the modeling, all the posting on Instagram live in real time. And I'm like, we got to get you, this is content that can be static. Doesn't have to be live. You just have to get good models, good product, and stage it right. But of course, I'm not advising her on that. I'm telling her, you need to go get
you're the CFO. You're taking the marketing role.
Yeah, no, I'm like, you got to get a content team. Yeah. But I know a bit about marketing, and I'm very savvy with social media and with content creation because I am a creator myself. So I say, there are some opportunities here. I see the opportunities, but I'm not going to help you execute them. So here are some people who can.
So you have a podcast and you started creating content, which I assume is pretty much how you're getting all your customers.
It's a huge way. So being on podcasts and delivering my podcast, which has over 400 episodes now, it's been amazing. And just so many different benefits of podcasting, which you've spoken about recently in your content, like the networking aspect, but also it's free training as well from the guests. It's amazing. The conversations that just flow and getting exposure to that and building up more expertise and more repertoire with your audience. Yeah.
What made you decide to start creating content?
I think it was just always a necessity. I said, I don't want to be, you can
because you were in corporate and you're not making content in corporate. Were
Absolutely.
you?
Well, I was on Instagram heavy in corporate because it was the one platform no coworkers were on.
Because they're all on LinkedIn.
They're on LinkedIn. I was closeted on LinkedIn for 2 years and I came out when I quit and it was great. I was already building a podcast. I was already 6 months into my podcast.
On Instagram and stuff.
On Instagram going heavy. I had several thousand followers.
Were you doing it just because you knew you were going to leave?
Yeah. I was building it up on there. And I knew that was a safe place where I could build content to start building my brand.
Nobody watching.
With nobody watching. And here's the interesting part. I hired 4 people and I was a director in my company. I hired 4 team members during that time when I was doing both. And I'm like, thank God none of y'all Googled me. They never did. And I go, let this be a lesson. Google the person you're going to work for. You would have found it by then.
Yeah.
But nobody found it. And I was already hitting the top 200 in entrepreneurship in the podcast category by then.
Yeah.
And I was a little nervous that they were going to find out what I was up to in my spare time, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter, but you just didn't want that judgment or have anybody, questioning your devotion to it or not giving you opportunities because of it.
Yeah. I want to talk more about content, but something you just said is interesting to me because I've never worked a corporate job. I've actually never had a job other than baseball. And, it's funny because I never spent any time on LinkedIn or Twitter. I just focused on Instagram. Then I got into TikTok and YouTube. And to me anyways, it's like, okay, the entrepreneur hustle people, that's where they like to be. And the corporate, techie, more nerdy, I guess higher thinking people are on like LinkedIn and Twitter.
Yeah.
And it's just, I don't know. It's funny to me because I still don't even we post on LinkedIn. I don't know how it's doing. I don't look on it, period.
Yeah.
And it's just like, what are those? What's going on over there?
It's it's like a company happy hour over there. It's just kind of like that conversation you have to have and the DMs are much more like hello and sincerely. And
okay. Speaking of the DMs on LinkedIn and stuff, it's just like all spam.
It is. You
don't even have real DMs. They're just spam.
No, I get constant pitches from outsourced people in India to get my taxes outsourced to them.
Yeah.
And I almost I wanted to go, is there a way, LinkedIn, for me to change my header on my profile to be like, Shannon Weinstein, fractional CFO, podcaster, no outsourcing.
Yeah.
Please don't DM me. But it's constant. The spam is constant and it's really challenging. But LinkedIn is really cool to connect with colleagues and connect with other folks who are doing what you're doing. At least in my space in particular, there's a lot of accounts on there.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's really cool to meet other people doing what you're doing and seeing them doing it and how they're doing it and get good inspiration and ideas. So I actually post genuinely on LinkedIn a lot in my own time and on Twitter or X. And that's usually me in real time posting versus the more curated content on Instagram.
Yeah. It's funny because I was never on LinkedIn and my COO, Javi, came from the tech world. And so he's always been on LinkedIn because that's freaking how you do it. You just meet people, you get recruited on LinkedIn and all this stuff, right? And so he's now utilizing LinkedIn because he told us all one day, he's like, everyone, you need to update your LinkedIns. You got to show Pineda company so it doesn't look like this freaking scrub company because only 4 people work here.
Yeah.
Because nobody's updating their LinkedIn profile. He's like, everyone needs to make their LinkedIn profiles and we need to, write a review, do whatever. And because we're recruiting people and they're looking at this.
Can I share one of the most underappreciated features of LinkedIn?
Okay.
The recommendations.
Okay.
So you can request a recommendation from someone. In particular, we use this on the podcast.
Okay.
So I will recommend the guests that have come on, that I've had a really great experience with. I will also request a recommendation for the show.
Yeah.
Those make fantastic testimonials or great things for your media page. If you're pitching podcasts, you can now take testimonials about you as a guest or testimonials about your show. And you can specifically ask for a recommendation from clients. And it's a great way to ask for testimonials in a very subtle way that's kind of structured. So you don't have to ask them to, fill out a whole form, or it kind of cuts to the chase on getting that content for you.
Yeah. What made you, you've been podcasting now, you're 400 episodes in. What made you choose the podcast route?
The hilarious part of it is I wanted to create a butt ton of content without having to get dressed.
Okay.
I was like,
right.
I want to be able to be on audio. And I want to try this because I want to test the waters.
So you weren't doing video at all?
I wasn't doing video at all in the beginning because I knew this is what with content, you have to reduce the barriers to entry.
Right.
And the barrier for entry for me was I don't want to have to put a whole thing together and get dressed and do my makeup and do my hair and do all this stuff. It created barriers where I just stopped creating because I was like, I don't have time to do all this stuff. And I just said, you know what? I can just pop on at night when I have an idea, after a walk, whenever, looking like whatever, and not turn the camera on and deliver really good content. And then that's how I broke into it. And then I got into the video as that got easier.
Yeah.
So it got easier to go off the cuff. At first it was like me reading my blog posts out loud and learning.
I was actually going to say that. I think the intellectual side, these corporate side, they're not, these flamboyant, charismatic, influencers. They're corporate people.
Yeah.
And a lot of them are very intellectual and introverted and everything else. And so I think that is also why Twitter or X now is a great platform because you just type your stuff. You blog, essentially.
Yeah. And I think with the podcast, why I went in on the audio is because my tonality comes across. Because again, as an accountant, people hear it in a certain voice.
Yeah.
And if I'm writing thought leadership type content, they're going to hear it in a direct lecture-y way.
Yeah.
Unless I'm making the jokes I make. I'm talking to them like I'm talking to a friend. I actually pretend I'm getting on someone's voicemail. And I just go, how would I leave a voicemail and share this information with somebody? And that is what really drove it into a more friendly conversational approach. And if anyone listens to my show, it's completely like joke after joke, analogy after analogy, and trying to explain the complex world of taxes and accounting in a way people can actually understand and relate to real life, because too many people are trying to teach it using the jargon.
Yeah.
And we even call it the judgment and jargon-free zone. And also the ranch dressing that is the broccoli on the broccoli that is business finances.
I thought accountants can't have any personality.
No, we're not allowed to. I'm kind of violating all the rules right now. No, they really don't. And it's, what's really funny is I didn't get along with so many of my coworkers because they had no sense of humor.
You're boring.
Yeah. I was bored with a lot of the things that you felt like you had to do. And I think a lot of accountants actually criticize me for my content. And they say, why are you giving that away? And why are you that's not completely perfect, and you didn't include the nuances and all the fine print. And I go, we have 60 flippin' seconds. Yeah. I'm not going to, like a Star Wars, the Star Wars scroll.
I like when the accountants
comment on.
Well, yeah, they'll like make a reaction video to something I said, and I'm like, I don't know. You're the accountant. You whatever. I have 30 seconds to say whatever I was going to say.
I've done that. I've done that with other creators, but I do it in a way that I say, I'm going to add to this because Ryan started the first 30 seconds. Yeah. Here's the next 30 seconds.
Right.
That he didn't include. Not that he didn't want to.
Yeah.
But he had 30 seconds.
Yeah, exactly.
I studied this for 4 years. If I could cram it into 30 seconds, the exam wouldn't have been so big.
Yeah. And all right, you know what? I'm going to explain the whole tax code to you. It's going to take about 3 hours. Let me, just on this section too.
It's like you want it in bite-sized chunks, but then you're criticizing the nuance. And I'm going, what would you like, right? So
I think it's only the accountants that criticize.
There is.
Normal people are just like, oh, that was cool.
Yeah, but there's also the assumption that oh my God, I can take my kids to Disney World and I can deduct it. And I'm like, hold the phone. They get all excited and then I have to be the buzzkill. My clients come to me and go, this person said I can. They didn't say you can. Yeah. They just said it's possible. Yeah. It's also possible that aliens are going to crash down tomorrow. It's also possible you're going to see a unicorn.
Well, I think the alien thing has definitely happened with.
I think it's very possible, but
I think to go on a totally different tangent, I've seen this whole thing of this guy whistleblowing aliens or something. I don't know.
I know. None of us can be bothered because we all got our own stuff going on. I feel like it's not even hitting the news, but but it's just funny because the possibilities are endless in terms of what you can do with your taxes. And I always crack this joke to say. The number one question I get asked is, Shannon, can I deduct, and then insert anything here? Yeah. Can I deduct this? Yeah, you can deduct anything you want. By the way, how good do you look in orange? That is my next question for the jumpsuit. Yeah. Because I'm going, well, you can deduct anything. How risky do you want to be? Mm-hmm. How much do you want to push the envelope? And you can deduct anything you want to, but when the IRS shows up and questions it, how prepared are you to defend that? Right. Is really the question. It's documentation and defense. And I've let people deduct things that traditionally are not deductible because there's a really good case for it. Yes. And it's so unique and case by case.
Like a watch.
Yeah. Like a watch. Or in my case, when I say a trip to Disney, I have a client who sells clothing with Disney princesses on it. And so she goes to Disney at Run Disney events every single year and sells these pieces of clothing. And I go, those trips are actually deductible, but it's all in context.
Yeah, everything's in context. And I just tell people that all the time. I'm like, the number one thing, if you're an entrepreneur, okay, if the activity you're doing is helping you make money in some kind of way, there's a good argument to be made. It's a write-off.
Yeah. Generally, yeah. Is it advancing you in your business? Yeah. And then the whole ordinary and necessary, which is always up for interpretation. But you also have to find a CPA or a tax advisor that is of the same risk level as you, right? Of the same mentality as you, and that instead of saying why you can't do it, says, how can we make that work? Yeah, exactly. I think a lot of CPAs are just closed-minded, or they don't want to take on any risk or anything. And so it's challenging. It's very risky. So from our perspective, we can lose our licenses. We'd lose our whole career if we make one wrong step. We're always in a state of fear. Yeah, I know that. We're constantly scared. Yeah. So, and we write every email like it's going to be deposed because they are. Right. And this is the thing. I went to the SEC and was deposed at age 23 and had my entire laptop screen scanned and all my emails taken and it read back to me. That is terrifying. Yeah. And so I write my emails like I'm going to be deposed. Because it happens so early. Because it happens so often. And I think what people have to realize is that we're not we're not meaning to be that way, but we tend to be risk averse because we've seen what can happen and we've kind of been exposed to it. And we're a little bit more fearful because we've gotten hit with that stick before.
Yeah.
And I think that it's kind of like being empathetic to that, but also, like I said, finding someone who's risk balanced with you, because if you can work together and find something that works well for you, it's a perfect match.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm a risky guy by nature, and, I don't know. I just like it. And, it's just funny because I'm willing to try things, and, a lot of things don't work out the way you hope. And then other things do work out really good. And, it's figuring out, man, how do you, take a big swing when, it's worth it? And then how do you really not swing when the odds aren't in your favor? And I think that's what having a CFO helps you do. It's like, this is what you're already doing really well. Take bigger swings over here.
Calibrate the risk, calibrate what you're doing, and say, this is working, do more of it.
Yeah.
And then, but it's also, people are tempted to say, this is working. It means I can afford to take a risk over here and do something different.
Right.
And that's the temptation, like we said, is to get distracted and go do something else and say, this worked, I can do it again over here. And it's like, no, what if you just keep doing this?
Yeah.
Like, just keep doing that and do it better, or do keep doing this and teach people how to do it. Or it has to be iteration before you try to go do it somewhere else.
Yeah. One thing I think too that people need to understand is whoever your CFO is, they're going to be thinking either offensively or defensively.
Correct.
And that's going to be on their own natural profile of how they see the world. Like me, I'm an offensive guy. I'm like, let's roll, baby, and we'll figure it out.
For the fences. Let's do it.
That's me. But what I will say is, even though that's my natural inclination, there are times to be defensive. And like, even for me, this last year, when the real estate market shifted, middle of last year, I freaking got left holding so many flips, and I lost money on a lot of them. And I knew, I was like, it's time to be defensive. Like, the offensive streak of going for it the last bunch of years has served me really well, but now it's time to be defensive. And I would say, honestly, for the last year, I have actually been, some might perceive it as offensive for them, but like defensive for me, of like, hey, we got to protect cash. We got to draw the line. Yeah. We're not going to be buying things that we otherwise would have bought things during growth. We're not going to, we're really going to tighten up.
Yeah. And in a lot of the personal development space where I spend some of my time is seasons of yes, seasons of no.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of seasons of yeses, but yeses is you're signing your future self up for something. And you have to be careful about doing that too by, saying yes now means a commitment later when maybe you don't want to do it then, or maybe it's going to impact you then. But what I'm hearing from you is like seasons of yes, seasons of no. You have to really be offensive, defensive. It's really about knowing what you're going for right now. Like, what is the goal right now, and being aware of that. And I think a lot of business owners aren't even aware of what their focus is. They're just reactive.
Yeah.
And they're just kind of like, good opportunity. Yes.
They say yes to everything.
And then big investment to hire a CFO. No.
Yeah.
So it's kind of this kind of ebb and flow of, well, what is the priority? Like, what is the focus? And is that really going to get you closer to that goal, or is this a distraction?
Right. Yeah, I think everyone's, like I said, everyone's naturally going to be risk averse, take risk, offensive, defensive. And I will say, for me anyway, because we have so many offensive players, like my sister's our CFO. And so she is, I wouldn't say she's like defensive, but she's definitely like the balancing act of like,
you got to rein it in sometimes. Sometimes you actually have to have the contrasting person.
Yeah.
Because if you're an offensive person and you have some like rah, lighting a fire under, you're about to go faster, go.
Yeah.
It's like, sometimes you just need somebody to pull back and go, hey, have you thought about this?
Yeah.
Like a reel them in, kind of be a buzzkill.
Yeah. And that's exactly the way she does it. And she doesn't say like, no, you can't do that.
No.
She's like, hey, consider this. Like, where's the money coming from?
Yeah.
Because we don't have it.
What about this?
Yeah.
It's kind of like that cover the blind spot is what I call it. It's like when you're driving fast, you're not looking in the blind spots. And I go, here's this thing though coming up on your rear that you're not even looking at because you're so focused on this one thing, which you should be.
That's the only way to grow. Yeah. And I want to make that clear to everyone, right? This is something I struggle with, but I'll tell you, your company will only grow as big as, the CEO, visionary, founder is willing to dream and think and push forward, right? It's not like my CFO is going to be like getting us to 100 million, right? She's not going to like think of the ideas and the products and the things that are going to be necessary to do that. Nor is she going to be like, let's go, let's take the risk, let's roll. Like, that's not her job. Her job is to make sure that, hey, Ryan, whatever you decide to do, we can actually know that it'll make sense.
It's like they're backing you up.
Yeah.
Right? They're following you into battle, and they're saying whatever the orders are, we'll follow it. But here are things you need to know in order to make that decision wisely. And that's the really big thing about hiring a CFO, is that we are a cheerleader for you without just being purely wind in the sails all the time. We are always going to say, hey, be careful here. Watch out for that pothole. Watch out for that. The biggest thing I see entrepreneurs do with their CFO or their tax advisor mostly is they hand the keys to the car over to the person and say, you drive.
Yeah.
They shove themselves in the trunk, shut the door.
Right.
And they go, you do it. And if you're not involved in your finances, what it should be is you should be driving the car. You should have me in the front seat with the map.
Right.
Telling you where to turn. And then telling you, but ultimately you have the wheel.
Yeah.
But when you relinquish the wheel to somebody else willingly, you can't be mad where you end up.
Yeah.
And that is the biggest thing I tell people is you are giving the wheel because you say, I'm not a numbers person. I don't know this stuff. They're the professional. They should know better. Right?
You should run my business.
You should run my business. Right. And people try to do that with us. And we have these kind of core truths in our business. Like we can't care more than the client does.
Yeah.
And we can't do it for you. We work with you, but we don't work for you. So we're not going to drive the car for you, but we're going to be in the front seat alongside telling you how to navigate. And that's what people have to realize about that relationship with your tax advisor, your accountant, your tax pro, is they are there to sit in the front seat with you. But you have to keep your eye on the road and you have to hold the wheel.
Yeah. No, totally agree. A lot of people, and this is the unfortunate part about just like life and business, but a lot of people, don't want to take accountability. And so they would rather other people decide for them on things.
They can blame them.
And they can blame them later.
Yeah.
And I also say this about just like how people think. Like most people don't think for themselves. They'll consume content, whether it's from me or freaking Trump or whoever, Joe Biden, whoever they want to consume. They're like, yeah, this is what I believe. Yeah, it's like, no, you don't. You just heard this guy say it. Joe Rogan told you that. And now you believe it. It's like, learn to think for yourself and be accountable for yourself.
I agree. And that's actually where content comes in for me, is getting inspired,
Yeah.
but not carbon copying it and not making it into your 10 commandments by taking somebody else's belief structures. It's taking what you like from things, but also critiquing it, questioning it, reflecting on it and saying, I like this, but this is my take on it. And exercising that muscle in content. Like you said, taking the reaction videos or taking something somebody else created and say, here's my version of that. It's a little bit more nuanced, or here's how I would apply that in my space or my context, is a great way to get started in kind of adding some fresh perspective.
Yeah. Would you say as a CFO, you're more so coming, because, okay, to backtrack, a lot of people come in to get taxes done and they want to just save money. They're like, how do I lower my tax bill? Boom, 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 right?
Yeah.
And the accountant and the tax prep, all that stuff can be done, and tax strategy.
Yeah.
To me, a CFO is more like on the growth side of things. Like, how do we allocate resources properly to run the business better?
And you're right. The CFO side is that. We also do the tax strategy and tax minimization because we know that as a concern.
Yeah.
It's almost just to like put out that fire and say, that's handled.
Yeah, we're going to do that.
We're going to do that, but we're focused over here because ultimately a business that isn't growing will not have tax problems.
Yeah. And I tell people that all the time. They're like, what do I do about my tax bill? I made $100,000 last year. I'm like, nobody cares. Like,
Too close to decimal point.
yeah. Grow to get to $500,000. Like, let's figure out how to get to 200 and 300.
People are hiring $20,000 tax strategists to save $200 effing dollars.
I know.
And I'm like, guys, or like they find this TikTok online and I go, it's going to take you 12 hours to implement that strategy and you're going to save a total of $200. Now, are we done? And it's not, and here's the thing, it's not for lack of, we don't think you guys can do it.
Yeah.
Like people will send me the TikToks and say, can we do this? We can. But do you really want to spend that much time to save this much money?
Yeah.
No. Versus selling, versus creating, versus getting out there and appearing on speaking.
Yeah.
Like I would rather see you do a keynote speech than this.
Yeah.
Because it's going to make you way more money even after taxes. So it's really about allocating your time to the things that are worth your time and not getting hyped up by these like killer tax strategies. They are very real. But we have to look at the context in your situation and say, is it worth your time to do that? Because your time is valuable as a founder. And if you're not willing to invest the time to say, hire your kids into your business the right way, it's very time heavy to be able to do that the right way. So we have to look at, and this is the maximum you can save, it may not be worth it.
Right.
And that's okay. But we can focus your attention elsewhere. So I think where the CFO sits on that is tax minimization is one of the levers to pull. But it's also revenue growth, and it's also cost savings and efficiencies and systems. So we just have all these levers in front of us and deciding what to pull at what time. And being that I have the grip on the tax strategy one for my clients is really helpful, because then I can pull that lever when we need to without conflicting with any other interests or priorities.
Yeah. One thing I want to say, just for all the listeners, and shout out to everyone who's still on. We love you for making it, here closer to the end. But one thing I really want to harp on is, to me anyways, the one thing I want to convey is that I want people to have the earner's mindset, not the saver's mindset. And it goes back to that word budget. It's like, when you have the saver's mindset, you cap your mind into saying, well, I make 200 grand and that's what I do. And that's going to be what we do. And so I got to minimize taxes. And it's like, yeah, sure. If 200 grand is what you think is the limit to your capabilities, then sure, I guess let's, make it as efficient as possible. But for me, I've always been like, well, you know what? Okay, if I'm going to have this tax at 200 grand, why don't I just make 300 grand and it's irrelevant?
Exactly.
Why don't I just make 400 grand? And then, yeah, I've got more taxes, but what, like, at the end of the day, how much did I make? Like, what did I take home? That's my goal.
And how much control do you have? Because you don't have control over the tax code.
Yeah.
They could eliminate. So for example, QBI, which is a big thing for business owners, which is basically a 20% haircut right there off of your income that's taxable. QBI deduction that Trump installed is dying in a year and a half. If they don't change the law.
Yeah.
Business owners are going to pay way more in taxes. And it's like, you're actually subject to the legislative aspect of it, where they're going to change the tax code the way they want to. It's going to affect you. And there's only so many ways you can play it, where, frankly, as I've said on the podcast, you've said many times on the show, is that the entire tax code is just an incentive program for you to earn the money the way they want you to.
Yeah.
And they don't even want you to earn a W-2 income.
No, they don't.
Well, they want you to pay taxes.
Yeah.
But if they're really incentivizing you to own real estate and to build businesses and create jobs. And if you're doing that, you're doing the work of the government wants you to do.
Yeah. And they're going to subsidize you to do it.
Exactly.
And that's the one thing I love about real estate too. I mean, we haven't talked a lot about it, but it's like, when I look at my tax bill and everything else, the thing I'm just like, well, if I just buy more real estate, the tax bill's going down and I'm actually making money in the like, I might not make money today, but I will make money in the long term.
Exactly. And so many W-2 earners come to me and they'll say, what can I do to save money in taxes? And I go, save for retirement, buy an investment property.
Yeah, that's it.
Like, and I go, and I'm not even going to charge you for that. Like, that advice. I have to go, like, not earning money the way you're earning it is the answer.
Yeah.
And no one wants to hear that. They think, how can I minimize my taxes? And I just go, it's like people, sorry, California, but it's like people who live in California complaining about their taxes. And I go, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But you've got another 10-ish% on the federal.
It
and
is
a
what
lot
it
of
is.
disadvantage. Yeah, but I go, that's why states can compete. And that's why Nevada, where we are right now, is, state income tax free, crushing it. And the idea is, if you really want to live in California that bad, you'll pay the price to live there. And that's just like the unfortunate truth of it, is that you're buying your ability to live there.
If you want to live in California, you're going to pay like an inflation price with the real estate, the cost of everything.
Absolutely.
Plus you're going to pay an income, inflation basically of 10% or whatever they are now. And that's the cost to do business there.
It's the cost to do business in California. And I knock on California. New York's pretty much just as bad, but it comes down to, it's your choice though, where you want to build your business, and you have complete autonomy to decide that. And if you're going to do that, just know what you sign up for.
Yeah. I will say, I'd actually like to hear your perspective as we wrap up here. This is a I don't know what the legal answer is, but I'll just ask you. So when would you advise an entrepreneur to actually pay their taxes? Because there's a lot of theories out there. People are like, pay them quarterly and budget and all this. And then there's people like, pay them in April. And then there's guys like me who are like, I ain't paying them. Freaking, I'll pay them in October or whatever. And when I look at the math of it, it's like, well, they're going to charge me this much in penalty. I can make more than that. So I'll just wait.
Yeah. So my advice is based on the person. If I'm advising you, cool, your approach is fine.
Yeah.
If I'm most people, I don't tell that to.
Okay.
So I have to have an awareness on the person's ability to manage their money.
Okay.
Because if they're really not good at managing their money, there are some people, Ryan, who go the other opposite polarizing, and they say, I'm going to overpay my estimates. I know.
Jeez.
Is that in your vocabulary? I don't know. So overpay my estimates.
Let me give you free money, government. You don't have to give me any interest, nothing.
Yeah, but you know what they do? Because they know they're going to spend it.
Yeah.
They know themselves. They know their behavior. And I'm not judging them.
Yeah.
But I'm saying
it is a smart play
you
for
are
them.
not that person, which is why you laugh. But there are people out there who use it as a savings vehicle because they don't have the discipline.
Right.
So
they're the Dave Ramsey people.
Right. They are the savers.
Yeah.
So, and there's nothing wrong with that. But however, if you're listening to the show, you're probably earner mindset. So the thing is, it's understanding that there are different archetypes, if you will, for this answer. And it goes all the way across the spectrum. Now, me personally, what I do is we actually pay, we look at the estimated payments, which are it's your homework assignment. We don't do extra credit.
Okay.
We do the homework and we'll say, okay, the penalties, I have the power of doing a tax return and a pro forma for my clients. So I actually put together their 2023 tax returns already and already told them what their penalty is going to be if they don't pay.
Yeah.
And they're like, $700? Screw it.
Yeah, I ain't paying.
So yeah, I ain't paying it. So we have a predictive ability when you work with me to be able to figure out like, what's it worth to you?
Yeah.
You can have that cash in the bank until April. So you have another 6 months or so of cash in the bank. Or you can pay this and avoid $700.
Yeah.
Like
or file an extension.
Well, the extensions don't extend the payment. Only the paperwork.
Right.
So we try to get them to pay on time and not get penalties. Because if you have paid on time and you show good behavior, if something happens down the line, you can get penalty abatement and you can basically get rewarded for good behavior.
Got it.
So you can actually put in good word with the IRS and like, we're cool. We're good because we pay on time. And I encourage them to do that if they have the means, to just pay on time and not get any notice letters. However, but people don't understand is you're not rewarded for paying more than your homework assignment.
No.
So, and even then, paying estimates is not always necessary, especially as business owners.
Right.
Because imagine you pay your estimates for Q1. Q2,
you get killed.
You get killed.
Yeah.
Q3, you're in the hole. Q4, it's okay. But at the end of the day, you actually would have gotten a refund and you never had to pay that estimated tax payment.
And you could add that money to work in your business.
So what I typically advise my clients to do, which is not tax advice for the sake of this show, disclaimer, right? Is a lot of times with my business owners, because they have volatile businesses, like you said, it can be all over the place. It's not cyclical or seasonal. So what they'll end up doing is not paying Q1 or Q2.
Okay.
And I say, let's see how the year's going.
Yeah.
Now we'll do the forecast for the rest of the year. Ballpark it, July and August right now, we are doing the pro formas for our clients and doing the prediction of where their tax return is going to be. And I say, you're probably going to owe about this much money. Let's talk about the cash flow. And we pull up their forecast. And I say, would you rather plot it here? Or would you rather plot and chip away at it here? Would you rather put it in a high yield savings account, have it earn interest for the next 6 months?
Yep.
Even that. Even if you're not using it in an investment, but you're keeping it liquid.
Yep.
I recommend keeping it liquid and getting one of those high yield rates right now because they're actually really good.
Yep.
You're going to make more in interest than you would in penalties.
You will.
So having it in your bank account is going to do you better.
Yep.
But people don't think that way because they think penalty, they think punishment, they think I'm in trouble, I'm going to go to jail, I have to put on an orange jumpsuit. You wouldn't believe how many people text me, because people text me all the time.
I didn't pay in April. I'm going to jail.
Like they'll say, hey, Shannon, can you help me? I have a problem. I said, what? And they go, am I going to jail? I'm like, you missed one $700 payment. You're okay. Like I've seen, if anybody listening goes, I'm a tax hot mess, I'm so scared. I have seen way worse.
People go years without paying tax.
Yes, I had people who've gone 10 years without paying taxes and own 5 businesses.
They're totally fine,
and they have assets between them. They're not even keeping track of. And I'm going, none of you are in that position. Trust me. And there's nothing we can't unravel.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's always funny to me. But to sum up that thought, at the end of the day, you want to get a CFO who understands your risk tolerance, your business, your acumen, your habits, so that you guys can make the best decision. And look, if you're safer mentality and you want to go prepay the government, by all means you can, but it's the dumbest thing to do. So it's like, maybe just get better at your habits. Like figure out how to change and
work
adapt.
On the discipline.
Work on your discipline so that like you actually can make the optimal decision. That's my advice. But look, if to each their own, and
what works for you.
Yeah.
And like you said, hire a CFO or a tax advisor. Hire the right type of professional that can answer the questions that you need right now. Because I think a lot of people will either overhire or underhire that role and not realize that like their bookkeeper is not giving them tax advice, and then they're upset, or their tax advisor is not giving them strategic advice, or their tax preparer, I should say. And you have to just understand who to hire. What area you're in.
One thing I want to add too is this happened to a friend. he had two choices. It was either pay his taxes or pay this other thing. And they're both significant. He didn't have money to pay both because his taxes ended up being higher and this thing came out of nowhere, right? And look, in business, we always have unexpected things. Legal bills, something happens, whatever, right? So this is going to happen to you. It happens to me. And so he had a choice. He was like, do I pay my taxes or do I pay this? He chose to pay his taxes. And this was back like in April. And now he's got this thing that's a far bigger liability and problem for his business, his life, and everything else. And I was like, why did you pay your taxes? They're not going to do anything to you. Like, you're going to get a penalty, but you're not going to jail for not paying your taxes.
No. And here's another thing too that people don't realize is that from someone who's on the inside of it and talking to the IRS weekly, first of all, they're the nicest people. Okay. They are not some evil entity out there to get you. Number two is, the IRS is actually the most friendly. The FTB in California is another story, and they're probably going to come for me for saying that. They are the worst. They're relentless. However,
what is the FTB?
Oh, sorry, the Franchise Tax Board, the state California IRS.
Got it.
So the IRS is actually insanely flexible. So for example, I have a client who's like 2 years past due on their taxes.
Yep.
We got another 6 months extension. They're not even going to send them another bill.
Yep.
And they're just going to be getting these interests that gets added onto it.
You can do payment plans with them.
You can do payment plans. There's so much flexibility.
Yeah.
Because they would rather get a little bit up front and put the rest on payment plan and an installment agreement. And the standard installment agreement is 72 months.
Yeah.
So you can spread it out over 72 months.
Exactly.
If it's like under 50 grand, you can get it approved online through a form.
Yep.
Guys, it is so easy to work out the tax stuff and to actually make that into a cash flow spread than to feel like it's an insane burden right now. So if you take nothing else away from this episode, you have more control than you think you do.
And that's the whole point I want to make. And I want to also be clear. So if the government's watching, you guys know I've paid my taxes. Like,
same.
I just delay paying them because financially it is a smart decision for me to do that. And I also know that there are situations in business and life where the business problem supersedes the tax. And it's like, well, if you don't take care of this, there's no business. Like, you're not going to have a tax problem next year because you ain't making any money.
Right.
So I'd rather the government give me what I would say a free loan to go take care of this and then, make sure that this is good.
Absolutely. I would completely
And the government, that's why they have payment plans. It's like, they would rather that too.
Yeah, they just want to get as much as they can from you as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
But they understand and they are flexible with what your cash flow situation is. You can basically submit personal financial statements and say, this is how much money I make and this is how much money I can pay you. They approve it because they'd rather get that than nothing.
Exactly.
And they would rather actually not spend the resources and energy to send you all that paperwork and the notices.
Exactly.
They would rather get you on a payment plan and know what's coming in for their sake of cash flow.
Yeah. Nope. 100%. So I've had a lot of fun talking about this. You are, like I said, you're not your normal boring CPA.
Appreciate that.
You've got energy and, you got the same mindset as me. So for anyone watching who's looking for fractional CFO services, definitely check it out. What's the website again?
Fitfinancialsolutions.com, but we'll make sure link it in the show notes for you so you don't have to spell that.
Cool. Yeah. we might have to work on the name and just get an easier website.
Oh yeah. I have Keep What You Earn Company and we trademarked it and we're going to be switching that over soon.
Keep What You Earn. I like that.
Yeah. Keep What You Earn is my website. So you can head there to learn more about the podcast and you can click on CFO services there too.
Perfect. Cool. So guys, check that out. And if you have not yet, make sure to subscribe to this show and we'll catch you on the next one. Peace.
Go to school, get a degree, 9 to 5, 401k, do the safe route and take care of your family. Like, that's what my dad taught. Like, that's what you got to do. 2 months later, he passed away. And on his deathbed, I specifically remember having conversations about his regrets.